Political prisoner from Zimbabwe. I'm a prominent lawyer and an opposition member of parliament before my incarceration on the 14th of June 2022. In my more than 3 decades of political career, I've been arrested 68 times.
The history of Zimbabwean politics can never be told enough if we do not remember the names of Lenmo Jongwe, Job Sikhala, Wiwa, Morgan, Changirai, Isaac Matongo, and a whole host of people who have been working to ensure that there's a different voice, that ideas contest in our political terrain. And this journey has not been an easy one for these names and many more, including even the late Tuboy, Ed Katekere, who fought very hard to ensure that Zimbabwe does not become a one-party state. On this, the situation right now, we discuss the history and the path that has been taken to ensure that democracy in Zimbabwe remains alive to this day. Now, join me after this break on this, the situation right now. Welcome back to this, the situation right now. With me, host as usual, Dara B. Now, on this episode, we are going to look at the history, the path, and the movement, especially as we sit down with the lawyer, colleague, and a friend, Honorable Job Sikhala, as he celebrates his birthday. I think it is momentous for us to be able to look at your history, the path that you have walked to this day. Happy birthday, Honorable Sikhala.
Thank you very much, Dara. Welcome.
Yeah.
True, today is my birthday. It is my 52th birthday since I was born on the 30th of October 1972. The brief history of myself is that I was born in Masema. It's an area located in the eastern side of Kutu, where my parents own a small farming plot where they were doing their peasantry farming and so forth. I then went to Masema Primary School from grade 1 to grade 7. It is one of the schools which the late General Shinavashe Gawa attended. It is also a school that produced quite a number of many people. And from there, I then went to do my junior certificate education, that is Form 1 and Form 2, at an upper top secondary school, which was started soon after our independence in 1980, called Chiwara Secondary School. It is also located there in Kutu. After completing my Form 2 at that school, I then went to Masungunye Government Secondary School, which is located in Pikita. And then from there, I wanted to pursue to become, at that material time, I was a religious fanatic. I was a youth preacher at my Reformed church in Zimbabwe Church. So I wanted to to be a pastor. There was so much, you know, love for preaching, and also the word was in me and in my heart. So after completing my O-levels at Masingonya Secondary School, I wanted to pursue to become a trained and ordained pastor for the Reformed Church in Zimbabwe. I went to Mare Theological College at Morgenstern Mission, where I did exceptionally well in terms of the interviews that were conducted there. I had 86%. The only person who had a higher mark than me during the period was the late Reverend Chifoko. After having gone for those interviews, it was in 1992. I failed to be admitted on the basis that they wanted somebody married. But myself, I was a young boy at that material time. The issues of marriage was not even remotely in my mind. That's why I had to get married 8 years later in 2000 with my current wife. So they later said we can only admit people into pastoral work who are married. And having not been married, I was not admitted. So that's when then I opted to go for A-level studies. So I was taken by my uncle to go and stay with him in Kadoma, in Mashumevel in Kadoma. He went and found some place for me to do my A-levels at Jameson High School in Kadoma. But you know, I didn't want to do the 2 years before. I had delayed myself to go to A-levels, waiting for me to be admitted to become a pastor. So I said, no, I can't take 2 years for me to do my A-levels. A lot of my time had been taken while I was waiting to become a pastor. Secondly, I also considered the financial position of my parents. And I saw it extremely difficult for them to be able to support me for the 2 years if I was going to take 2 years. So I said, no, I will try to give a shot when I'm in lower six for me to sit for my A-level examinations and see whether I will pass or not. So I read quite very hard. And I was pleased that after having sat for the A-level in 1994, I was able to pass for me to be able to go to the University of Zimbabwe. At that material time, I still remember that it was myself and one good fella and a very good friend of mine who is now late, called Stephen Maja, who managed to score points for us to be admitted at the University of Zimbabwe. So I only wrote A-level within the 8 months because we were still doing Cambridge. So I went there in January, started with others and read extremely hard. By October, we were sitting for my first paper in history. And I managed to score enough points for me to be admitted at the University of Zimbabwe. But then before waiting for me to start my studies at the University of Zimbabwe, I just like all of us during that material time, I went and sought a deployment in temporal teaching in Kutu. I was able to be admitted. I was able to find a job to teach at Makura Secondary School, where I was the Shona history and the geography teacher. And the bizarre part of it is that I was asked to take Form 1s in geography, a subject that was not an area of my liking. I never liked geography. although I passed it at O level at Masungunya Secondary School. So I taught in 1995 at Makura Secondary School, and then in 1996 I went to the University of Zimbabwe. After arriving at the University of Zimbabwe, I quickly get in good sync with other leaders whom I found there. Lenmo Jongwe, Tafazom Secure, Daniel Molokela, Shelton Mpambra, and other student activists at the University of Zimbabwe in 1996. So, but already I had high political consciousness. For since when I was doing my O-level at Masungunya Secondary School, there was one particular teacher who had a huge impact on my political consciousness called Phineas Dambuza. Phineas Dambuza at that material time was studying at the University of Zimbabwe, and then he would come back at our school. That was in 1989, wearing a Zoom t-shirt, which had a white Zoom t-shirt which had three hands that were put together in the front and so forth. And during the period when he was teaching us, he would sprout some political orientation, and unbeknown to him, what he has been doing did a lot of impact to some of us on things that he has been telling us. He was also telling us about the 1989 University of Zimbabwe demonstrations that took place during that time, which were led by Enoch Chikweche, who is now Munyaradzi Kwisai and Atham Tambara's leadership. That later led to the temporal closure of the University of Zimbabwe at that time.
So at this particular time when you're at the UZ, what's happening to your love and desire for the gospel? What happens to your idealism?
The gospel of God. Initially, I arrived at the University of Zimbabwe still being an extremist, a religious enthusiast, where I become part and parcel of the Reformed Church in Zimbabwe youth leaders. We would dispatch ourselves to go to different mission schools owned by the Reformed Church in Zimbabwe. The Reformed Church in Zimbabwe is missions such as the Nyashanu Mission, Pamshana Mission, Good High School, Chippy High School, and others. So I continued initially being religiously active in a huge manner. I still remember that when we went for the outreach preaching program at Nyashanu High School, some people still remember me for the great preach that I did. I used to preach and people crying in church. Because I knew there was something in me that would, move and speak to the spirits of people. I was a really, strong preacher of the word of God.
So what happened to you? Because now you're not.
The issue that happened is that you have to understand that there was conflicting issues in myself. I was also extremely political conscious and also strongly religiously fanatic. So I wanted my spirit to locate me where I belonged. And it did not take long that after having been admitted at the University of Zimbabwe in 1996, in March, studying history and economic history, I was elected to become the faculty representative on the second week of my arrival at the University of Zimbabwe by the entire class of the first years. And that was the beginning of my journey into fighting injustice in this country. And it was also during that first year at the University of Zimbabwe, where against all odds, I was able to defy the theorem that was running high at the University of Zimbabwe, that first years cannot become student representative council leaders. I contested for the elections in 1996, the year I arrived at the University of Zimbabwe. And I wanted to become the Secretary for Information and Publicity and the spokesperson of the University of Zimbabwe Student Representative Council in my first year. So I on the basis that my message to the students was resonating with the causes of the student population. So after having been elected into student leadership, activism started extremely powerful, but not forgetting that when you arrive at the University of Zimbabwe at that time, I don't know whether it is still the culture that is happening up to the present day. There is a week called the Orientation Week, where students will be oriented on what the University of Zimbabwe is. So the Student Representative Council, that is the leadership of the Students' Union, will be also holding an orientation week for students to orient them in the politics of the University of Zimbabwe and the politics of student activism, what is expected of students. It also played quite a major role. But I was impressed that Len Mojongwe was one of those people who had been chosen outside the SRC to become one of the persons who was going to orient incoming students into student politics. He was a second year law student then. I was extremely impressed by the way how he was able to narrate what is expected of students in the struggle on several fronts in our country. So it really went a long way in convincing me that I have got a role also to play. That's why I had to join student politics at that time during my first year.
How do you find yourself in the MDC on its formation in 1999?
What happened is that during the period of our student activism, we became extremely popular in this country on the basis of many issues that we tackled. One of the major demonstrations that we demonstrated for was on the discrimination against Strife Masiwa to be granted a license for him to operate his Econet in Zimbabwe. It was then given to one Tutsi guy who came from Eastern DRC to come and open the first telecommunications wireless telephone services in Zimbabwe. So our argument was that how would the government prefer to give the operating license to a foreigner, while they are ignoring their own child in the country? So we set as the executive of the Student Representative Council for us to be able to look on the ways how we were going to intervene and say, why are you discriminating against Strife Masiwa to be given a license? So that demonstration became one of the most famous demonstrations that our SRC, which was being led by Len Mujongwe as our president and myself as the spokesperson, raised at the University of Zimbabwe. The demonstration shattered down the Harare at that time. We came in our thousands to come and protest against the discrimination that was being done against Strife Masiwa at the same time. Also, what agitated the students was an alleged statement which was being attributed to the then Minister of Information and Telecommunications, who was Joyce Mujuru, that she is labeled Joshua Ngomo, the then Vice President, to be a senile person who cannot make proper judgments on the basis of his senility. In that, Joshua Ngomo came out and said, why are we not able to promote our own children for them to get licenses to operate in this country rather than giving a foreigner? So that statement, which was said to have been uttered by Madam Joyce Mujuru, irritated and angered University of students too much. So it did not give us, difficulties for us to be able to mobilize the students for them to understand that the discrimination against Econet was based on corruption and was based on an injustice. We also embarked on quite a number of many demonstrations. One of them, which was inspired by the demonstration that happened in Indonesia at that material time. Indonesia was under the governance of a dictator called Suharto. The students in Indonesia rose against the dictatorship of Suharto and overthrew him from power in 1997.
You wanted to overthrow Mugabe?
That's when we then launched a demonstration called Operation One Time. We were inspired for us to also do exactly what the Indonesian students have done to Suharto against Robert Mugabe, because at that material time, a lot of corruption was taking place. That is when the issues of the War Veterans Fund scandals were on the national agenda and national crisis. The collapse of the Zimbabwean dollar after the Black Thursday, Zimbabwe's involvement in the war in the DRC, which massively affected the economy in Zimbabwe, the lack of support for student grants and for them to learn properly at the University of Zimbabwe and so forth. So there were a plethora of many issues which were confronting the nation, which we told ourselves that we must deal with them as student leadership. So when we launched the demonstration called Operation One Time, its intention, specifically speaking, was that if the students in Indonesia have done it, why can't we also did it? If they did it, we can also did it. So we mobilized the students at the University of Zimbabwe. At the Harare Polytechnic, they were also student leaders. I still remember the SRC president at the Harare Polytechnic was Charlton Wende. We went there and convinced this SRC for him to join us in the demonstration. We also went to Belvedere Teachers College. We convinced them that there was need for us to do what the students in Indonesia have done. We went to Secret Teachers College, where we addressed them as well. And there was now a general consensus among the students in Harare that we must gather at the African Unity Square. For almost 2 weeks, we gathered at the African Unity Square every morning. People were not waking up from their dormitory rooms to go to lecture rooms. They were waking up every day to march to Africa Unity Square. And some of us slept there at the Africa Unity Square at the Parliament building to demand that Mugabe must go as he has failed the nation. That is where I in full reflection, respect Robert Mugabe. Robert Mugabe did not come and shoot us at Africa Unity Square, but there were thousands and thousands of us, all the students in Harare, who gathered there for almost a week, sleeping at Africa Unity Square. No single student disappeared. But then there was an overzealous police officer who was called Gunda, who came and shot more memories Chawira at the University of Zimbabwe. An incident that later provoked us to put us into full determination that we must deal with this regime. Without dealing with it, we will be in trouble. Then, after spending a week there at Africa Unity Square, we later decided to address students on the entrance door of Parliament, where myself, Daniel Molokele, who was called Fortune Mugun then, Len Mojongwe, and other student leaders stood to address the students that the day for us to go and march to Monumutapa building to go and retrieve Robert Mugabe from Monumutapa building has arrived. So we marched in our thousands from Parliament building in Nelson Mandela. Then we entered into 2nd Street, and we turned to go to Monumutapa offices. We gathered at the front of that building on the space between the High Court and Monumutapa in our thousands, trying to go and enter into Monumutapa building to go and retrieve Robert Mugabe. What he simply did was for him to dispatch the riot police to come and beat up the students away from Monumutapa building. No single student was shot right on the front of Monumutapa building, when all of us were agitating that we want to get inside and retrieve him and arrest him and overthrow him from power. We were not shot, but he only sent the police, came through tear gas and dispersed all of us scattered into different directions. Then after that, we had that same night, in that same day, Chombo came out of Ignatius Chombo, UNU was then the Minister of Higher Education, came out on news pronouncing that the University of Zimbabwe and the Harare Polytechnic have been closed indefinitely. So Harare Polytechnic and Harare and the University of Zimbabwe were closed for a year. The Vice Chancellor from the University of Zimbabwe, Professor Graham Hill, and the Principal of Harare Polytechnic had to make announcement that students must come and quickly collect their goods and leave to go to their various rural homes. So this is the way how Mugabe demobilized us, by simply shutting down the University of Zimbabwe for a year and make sure that we will not be able to meet and organize ourselves. He did not shoot and kill us, which is completely different from the political situation of today, whereby anybody who is even remotely suspected and wrongly so and falsely so will be abducted at night, disappear, being thrown into prison for no apparent reason, but just a suspicion that Dara is organizing some action here. You get abducted, you get beaten up, you get thrown into prison. Just recently, you have seen that out of malicious allegations and so forth, Jacob Mgarufumi was just picked from his home on the assumption that he was preparing and organizing some demonstration pre-SADC summit in this country. Falsely accused him so, and then gave him a false charge that he was together with those comrades who are currently suffering in prison, Johnson, Timba, and that other big team. And why Jameson, Timba, and others are in prison today is that it is some speculative suspicion that when they gathered at his home, it was not celebrating the Day of the African Child on the 16th of June, but that they were planning some demonstration. So they must suffer. So that's why they are still up to present in prison. But Robert Mugabe would not arrest any one of us. No one of us was arrested. What we did as national leadership then, Dara, do you know what we did? We then gathered, we had a meeting and say, guys, our university and the Harare Polytechnic have been closed. What should we do? We said we must expand the crisis to make sure that all institutes of higher education in Zimbabwe are also closed. So let's deploy each other to different provinces and different universities for people to go and address. Myself and somebody called Zanu were deployed into Manicaland province, where my task was to go and address Marymount Teachers College, Mutare Technical College, Mutare Teachers College, and Africa University. And Lenmo Jongwe and Tafazwa Msekiwa, they got deployed to Gweru to go and make sure that they go and address Gweru Teachers College. There wasn't the MSU, there was Gweru Teachers College, Mukopa Teachers College, Gweru Technical College. Then we deployed Jetron Pofu and Daniel Molokela to Bulawayo to go and address colleges there. So when I was in Mutare, I was able to mobilize. I went and addressed at African University. Went and addressed at Mutare Polytechnic. Went and addressed successfully at Mutare Teachers College, and then at Marymount. Then we asked ourselves to go and gather at the governor's office in Mutare. The governor of Manicaland province then was Opam Chinguri, the current Minister of Defense. We went there with our petition demanding the immediate reopening of the University of Zimbabwe and Harare Polytechnic, and also the plethora of other demands that we were also having on the grievances that we had against the government. After successfully holding those demonstrations, I was then, that was my first arrest all my life. I was then told that Minister Ignatius Chombo has instructed myself to be arrested in Mutare. I couldn't believe it initially when I was being told about this information. But to my surprise, at the 8 o'clock news that evening, Chombo came out of television saying that Job Sikhala must be arrested and called for my arrest. Then I got arrested there. After having been arrested, Brian Kagoro, who was the student lawyers at that time, came to Manicaland to come and rescue me from the jaws of that arrest. I was dispatched and released by the court, but with a caveat that you are asked to leave Manicaland within the coming 24 hours. You must not be seen from Manicaland, disperse and go back wherever you come from. That is what the court said. That you have got no end case to answer, but we are telling you, leave Manicaland, and we don't want to hear that you are in Manicaland for the coming 24 hours. If you are yet to be in Manicaland for the coming 24 hours, we'll ask you to be arrested and come back to this court. So I had to leave Manicaland and come back to Harare, and we had our strategic retreat meeting and said how successful it was. All the demonstrations we were able to lead them throughout the country. However, it did not have the impact that we had, because what we wanted to do was to provoke the reactionary regime into doing what they did to the University of Zimbabwe and the Harare Polytechnic by closing all the institutes of higher education and create a national crisis. But they simply did that. Then coming to your very important question on the role which we played during the formation of the Movement for Democratic Change, very critical and important question. After we have led these successful demonstrations and also during our successful leadership of the students' movement in the country, we later resolved to revive the Zimbabwe National Students' Union. The brainchild of this mind, whether some people appreciate the roles which other people played or not, was Daniel Molokele. Daniel Molokele sifted on the documents when he became the acting president after the expulsion of Shelton Mpambwa and his deputy president, Mandaza, from the University of Zimbabwe. Daniel Mlokela was the Secretary General. He then became the acting president of the Student Representative Council. After he became the acting president of the UZ Student Representative Council, he sifted into the archives of the student activists at the University of Zimbabwe. He obtained and bumped into a document which was talking about an idea of a national students movement, which was being proposed during the period of Atam Tambara, Christopher Kiwa, and others who were leaders at the University of Zimbabwe, that they need a national student body that would be able to be the voice of all students in the country. And then Daniel Molokela became passionate about that issue of reviving the Zimbabwe National Students Union. We then sat down as UZ, as SRC, and said, we are no longer the only university in Zimbabwe. There is now NAST. That was the period when NAST came into existence and becoming a new second university in Zimbabwe. And all these other colleges, and say, guys, let's revive the Zimbabwe National Students Union so that we are going to be able to consolidate the student grievances under one umbrella, a voice, which was going to be the Zimbabwe National Students Union. So we held our first inaugural congress at the University of Zimbabwe at LT400 Hall on the 17th of November 1997, where a new national leadership was elected. The inaugural national leadership had Lenny Mojongwe as its president, Daniel Molokela the vice president. Somebody called Tamijo from NAST was also elected into the executive. Somebody called Wilson Box was elected to become the Secretary for International Affairs. Your journalist colleague, Blessing Zulu, of Studio 7, working in Washington, D.C., was also elected. I don't know he was from which college he was coming from. I can't still recall, but Wilson Box was coming from Chinhoyi Technical College. And then myself, I was elected to become the spokesperson and the Secretary for Information and Publicity of the inaugural Sinasu executive. After that, the student voice became an extremely de facto opposition in Zimbabwe. Because in Zimbabwe, there was a non-existent opposition political organizations there. So we realized the role that we were supposed to play as students, that we must be the voice of our parents, we must be the voice of opposition in this country, and so forth. And then at that material time, also labor was become extremely proactive. During the period, they were reorganizing themselves. There were quite a number of many mass actions and many shutdowns in 1996 and 1997, which the Morgan Sankrai-led Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions was leading throughout the country. So there became a synergy between the two bodies, ZINASU and the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions. So at one particular point, after we realized that ZCTU has become a formidable political force and also a voice for the oppressed in our country, Morgan Sankrai, we invited him to come and address us at the University of Zimbabwe. I remember myself being the person, at that time I was no longer the Secretary for Information and Publicity. I then contested the following year to become the Secretary General. I was now the Secretary General of the Students Representative Council at the University of Zimbabwe. So it was now in my office where all the authority of administrative issues were based. So we had to invite Morgan Sankrai. Initially, we invited him with Margaret Nongo and Priscilla Mishai-Rambwe to come and address us in Great Hall. Do you know what? The democratic space for people to meet on their own, deliberate issues was in abundance. And we held that gala in Great Hall starting from 7 p.m. after students have left their dining halls. And the Great Hall was in complete and full capacity. There is no student, male or female, who was left in his hall of residence who did not come to attend that great gala. That's when Morgan Tsvangirai articulated the vision for this country. That is when also Margaret Dongo came and articulated her vision for this country. That is where also Priscilla came with Margaret Dongo. She was with Margaret Dongo in Sud then. They came and also articulated their agenda. Then students were saying, we were not satisfied with what Morgan Tsvangirai has told us during the period of his first address in the Great Hall. Please invite him back again, because we want him to make an undertaking that he is ready to take the lead from the front to form an alternative political movement, which we all students are ready to be part and parcel to. That is when the relationship between ZNASU, UZ Students Representative Council leadership, and the ZCTU started. So Morgan Tsvangirai, we did not now invite him to come and address us in the Great Hall. We invited him to address us in LT 400 at 8 p.m. on a Thursday. Then we had some radical students at that time, one called Job PF. Job PF stood and challenged Morgan Tsvangirai. That Morgan Tsvangirai, we are challenging you to make an undertaking here now that you are going to lead us and make sure that Zimbabwe obtains an alternative political movement that will be able to fight the political space in this country. Then Tsvangirai was very clear. Don't push me to the front. And when I look at my back, there is no one. You must firstly reassure yourselves as students and its leadership that if we start walking this journey, you will not abandon me. And you will be at my back, and I will see that there are followers at my back. Then Lenny Mojongwe rose and told Morgan Tsvangirai and reassured him that both as ZNASU and also as University of Zimbabwe students, we were ready to work with him all the way through to the fight against Zanu PF. After that, what later happened is that Morgan Tsvangirai later called us for a meeting at Jameson Hotel. It's ZNASU. We had a meeting at Jameson Hotel. I think it's just a stone throw away from here. We went there. We find other civic organizations. And that meeting was being coordinated by the Zimbabwe Council of Churches. There was Depros Mchena there, Tawanda Mtasa, and others who were now trying to build a civic society movement, that is the National Constitutional Assembly, to bring it into existence, to fight for constitutional reforms in this country. But already Morgan Tsvangirai and ourselves, we were clear that we were not going to put our eggs in one basket. We were now thinking broadly to see how best are we going to solve the leadership question in our country. So what we agreed was for us to hold a convention where we will be able to list down the grievance questions in our country. After listing the grievance questions in our country, we will then look into alternative ways on how to address the national grievance questions and how we were going to implement them on the ground. So that's when you hear this working convention that was held in Hillside at the Women's Bureau, being touted by even people who don't know the origins of where all this started. Some people want to claim where they were not even been there. So Morgan Tsvangirai was able to summon all the civic society organizations in this country to come and deliberate on the three aspects that I've told you: the national grievance question, the alternative route, and also the method on how to tackle and become an answer to the national grievance questions. SINASO became one of the major stakeholders who were not only participants, but were part and parcel of the conveners of the National Working People's Convention that was held in 1998, in February 1998 at the Women's Peru. That is when we started to have active participation in the national politics. And the groups that were invited by Morgan Tsvangirai were broad-based. We had women's clubs. Women's clubs were being led by Sekai Holland. We had the war veterans. They were being led by Paul Timba, who was working for the Zimbabwe project. Who was working for the Zimbabwe. He was the director of the Zimbabwe project. The Zimbabwe project was an offshoot of the Zipra war veterans. And we also had Chitauro, who was coming from the Zanula end, and Dr. Chauna Mzingwa, and the other war veterans who were represented at the National Working People's Convention. We also had Zimbabwe Unemployed Union, Zuro, which was also a participant. It was represented by somebody called Dennis Morira. And we had the NCA, which was being represented by Brian Kagoro, Laf Mamaduku, Tendai Beach, and Welshman Mole. These are the people who were in the NCA. The NCA was constituted in 1997 at the Great Hall at the University of Zimbabwe, and these were the people who were leading the NCA. After the National People's Convention was held, we then planned to launch an alternative political movement on the 1st of July, 1999. And on that particular day, Zimbabwe was struck in a tragedy with the announcement for the death of the former Vice President, Joshua Mwawoko Nyongolongomo, was announced. We had to postpone the launch. We issued a statement. Morgan Tsvangirai issued the statement to say that we cannot proceed with the launch of the political party. But we continued holding meetings. One of the meetings that we held was where to decide the alternative political movement that we're going to have. Followed up, it had many players and others. And from Matabeleland, people like Dave Coulthard and others also joined in quickly after they realized that this was a broad-based movement of the masses of our people. So that's why the MDC was not very difficult to get resonance from the public, because it was constituted by organizations that had constituencies. So when the workers saw their leadership of Morgan Tsvangirai, Gibson Siwa, and the others seated on the front, they identified themselves with the MDC. When the students saw their student leaders, myself, Len Mojongwe, and Tafazo Msekiwa seated on the front bench, they identified with it. When the war veterans saw some of the people who participated with them during the liberation struggle, like Paul Tembanyati, Dr. Mzunga, and others, D.H. Tauro and others, they identified themselves with the organization. That's why the emergence of the MDC became a whirlwind and thunder in this country, on the basis that it quickly get resonated throughout the country, as it was a mass broad-based movement, which we...
Fast forward, you having been there when this idea was being birthed and working towards its fruition, you find yourself at loggerheads with Morgan Changira at some point, where you then go and form MDC 99. What happened around that area?
No, I think the thing that you have to understand is that myself and Morgan Sangrai have never had personal clashes at a personal level. Myself and Morgan Sangrai had extremely very close relationship, even throughout. That's why he had to visit me to my house and said, my son, please come back. Let's work together. I'm sorry for what has happened in the past. The issue which happened is that when you travel in a struggle, trials and vicissitudes happen and internal contradictions happen in the organization. So there was a group of people who surrounded Morgan Sangrai. And these people were elbowing out everyone whom they thought was one, either close to Morgan Sangrai, two, who was having mass resonance with the people, that this person is genuinely fighting. And they caused Morgan Sangrai to expel me from the MDC. I was shocked when I was seated at my house. One, Gandhi Mdzingwa, who later remained with the Douglas Monzora, drove a jalop of a pickup that was dancing. You know where my house is. It was dancing, those bottles coming to my house, bringing me a letter of suspension by Morgan Sangrai from the party. I asked myself, what wrong has I committed for me to be suspended from the party? But I knew that no, it wasn't Morgan Sangrai's mind. This was, the work of those toxic people that were around him, who simply wanted to eliminate and cause confusion and internal fights.
Who are these toxic people?
My suspicion is that this guy who brought the letter of expulsion of me from the party, Gandhi Mdzingwa, he has something to explain to me. I will ask him whenever I will meet him to say, what was your agenda when you brought that letter to me? But I did not stop there. I went to the High Court to challenge that expulsion. That's the precedent in terms of the constitution of the MDC. He had not even right for him to suspend anybody from the organization. This is the leader at the top. He cannot suspend his subordinates. And then the High Court said, no, there is nothing that exists in the MDC to exist. But these people continued and said, Job Sikhala will not accept him, even if the High Court has ruled that the president had no powers to suspend him, and so forth. And then I reminded them to say, we are now being lost in terms of the values and principles that we started in MDC in 1999. Hence, we must go back to our 1999 agenda, where we agreed in a social justice movement, where everyone has the right to be heard. The principles of natural justice says that any individual, no matter what you are alleged of having been committed, must be given the right to an answer. How would he carry a letter of suspension after when the letter of expulsion, when I have not been brought before any process to reach end without even knowing what I have been alleged to have been breached? So those are some of the things that happened. So like anybody who is, if you are expelled and fired, it's just like if you divorce your wife. Don't think that she will not be able to find another love outside you. So I did not want that to stop my pursuit to fight for democracy in my country. I said, and do you know at what age I was? I was 35 years old. That's why you realize that the MDC 99 did not even contest any election. There was no any election that we participated. But it became a movement that I wanted to remind these elders that we must not run away from what we agreed in 1999. The ends MDC 99, to remind them at every time that they must know the covenant we signed in 1999 was for us to have a home for everyone. That's why we became the movement that encompasses all different interest constituents groups that came together for a common cause for the nation of Zimbabwe. So these are things that you have to understand.
But it was called for you outside the MDC, was it not?
Pardon?
It was called for you outside the...
No. Those are some of the misconceptions people had, but people carry in their heads. There is no way when you are doing things that makes you happy in your heart. There are things that we do which gives us satisfaction in ourselves and in our hearts. That are more important.
But you came from addressing rallies that would be attended by tens of thousands of people when you were in the MDC, to attend to rallies that had 40, 50 people. Wouldn't that be called?
No, that's completely a misnomer and a misinterpretation of politics. The first thing is that I've never addressed the rallies as the MDC 99 president. Where did you get that from? But you know, what I did is, when I put the MDC 99, it was a word to remind my elders, let's go back to the 1999 values and principles. It wasn't ever made to contest elections in this country. It was a reminder that let's go back together. Where in 1999 we came together as different constituents group, we became what we were because of the unity among different constituents group that came together. That was the intellectual concept of MDC 99. It never contested any elections. It never held any rally. Tell me, where did it ever hold a rally? Just give me an example.
So you had a party that never addressed people.
It was not a party. It was a pressure. It was an MDC internal pressure movement to remind the elders.
But you were a president of the MDC 99, so it was a party.
No, it wasn't a political party. A political party is not defined in terms of people who hold the positions. It is defined in terms of its activities. A political party is formed to contest elections, which MDC 99 never did. It's done to canvass and move throughout the country, holding rallies and everything, which the MDC 99 never did. It is an organization that is in contestation to wrestle power from the origin.
But so if you call it a political party and then don't do those things, it's still a political party, because you called it a political party.
No, we never called it a political party. I think you are mistaken about that. You are mistaken about that. That is your own personal assumptions. It has never been a political party. If we could have been a political party, we could have contested the elections. And also at that time, like what I told you, I was 35 years old. How would I become a presidential candidate when the Constitution clearly stipulates that a presidential candidate must be 40 years old?
Were you angry?
I was not angry. You know, there are things that you think that some of us would get angry about. Being expelled from the party did not anger me, but it only made me to laugh. Because there were certain people who wanted to now get control of the institution outside all others.
How could you laugh? Or not get angry? When at that time I clearly remember there was violence against you, even as you formed the MDC 99. Your house was patrol bombed, I think, at that particular time. How could that not anger you?
No! Do you understand? This when overzealous people engage in stupid things, just like when I came out of prison, when the whole world knew that Job Sikhala was arrested because of More Blessing Ali issue. You see some drunken, stupid people came to disrupt the funeral. And you were there and your team was there. Did you see any anger from me? I just laughed at them. So those people who came and patrol bombed my house, who patrol bombed my my shopping complex.
You protect your Lord?
What did they benefit out of that? I'm still here. Job Sikhala is here. So some of stupid don't, and this is the advice that I want to give you today, Dara. Never be angered by the stupid elections and the reaction, by the stupid actions and the reactions of stupid people. People will you will be angry all your lifetime. So some of these things, you look at them, you laugh over them, and then you go on with your life.
Honorable Sikhala, as you turn 52, what are your biggest regrets in this journey that you have walked?
You know, you reflect to say, what is my value addition in this nation? What have I done? Like what Nelson Mandela said. There are other men who have been born, whose names will never be remembered even by their own wives, who will never be remembered as if they ever existed. And there are those who will be remembered for their evil work. So when I reflect, have I done enough for me to obtain the goals and aspiration of a justice society in my nation? The trials and tribulations that I moved all the road up to this age of 52, it gives me deep reflections. Yes? No one, through the journey of a struggle, would ever say that I am perfect.
So let's talk about your regrets. What do you regret in that journey of the struggle?
That we have not been able to change an evil system that is still with us, more repressive than never before. That is my major regret in life.
What is your major highlight and success?
My genuineness. I'm not a pretender. I don't deceive. What you are seeing me is what you get from me. I still remember that in 2000, when I became the member of parliament for St. Mary's at the age of 25. I was a young boy. I promised them that I will be a completely different member of parliament. I will never abandon you. I will live with you and die with you here in St. Mary's. People still get shocked today why I'm still living in St. Mary's, having been successful in terms of my profession in other areas, and having been a member of parliament for almost 3 terms. I could have left St. Mary's and lived with others in the leaf suburbs. But it's a covenant that I made with the people, that I will not abandon you. I will die with you here, and I will die in St. Mary's, as I have made an undertaking. So what I'm proud about is my genuineness to the struggle.
So even if we elect you president of Zimbabwe, you will fulfill the status in St. Mary's?
No, we should not, work on the basis of hypothesis. Do you understand what I'm saying? We should not work on hypothesis. The issues of being president and so forth, leave it to the people like what I told you at our recent. That is the danger and risk that we have in our country. People are in pursuit of power, self-interest, and their egocentric needs. It's completely different from me.
Do you realize, Honorable Sikhala, that we, in this hour that we have said, we've actually written your book of life?
True.
Do you have plans to tell this information that you're telling me, that you're telling all of us here?
No, I didn't want to preempt it. The biography about myself is about to come out very soon. A very detailed book about who Job Sikhala is. There are many things many people don't know that will be revealed in that book.
Please give us the opportunity to review it first here with you when you launch it.
We can't review something that we have got contracts.
When you launch it.
No, we have got contracts with the people who are authoring it. They are still on their data collection stage.
I agree. I said when you launch it, give us the option of reviewing it first here.
You have always been my first reviewer ever. You are the only person whom I gave the first interview after I came out of prison. You must also honor and accept that honor. It means we respect you very much as HSTV.
No, thank you very much.
You have been so wonderful. You have been so impartial in terms of your coverage. I would not have accepted for me to give you the first interview. Before all, do you know how much complaints I have received from many houses why I gave you an interview and not them? They are overwhelming. But it means that it is a great respect that I have for MH as a group of media practitioners. So on that one, be reassured that you have been doing that. And also, I've seen that even the Zimbabwe Independent has been running, reviews of several political leaders' books, even the Atham Tambara book that I read in prison. I saw it was being run by AMH. So on that one, you would definitely expect me to give you the right to review that book exclusively.
Just before we close, unfortunately we've run out of time. But before we close, I just want you to reflect on your arrest, on your many arrests that you have endured.
Yeah. I think what the experience of having celebrated my birthday in prison the past 2 years is one thing that I would like to share with the people of Zimbabwe. I noticed and discovered that there are certain issues and certain aspects that we take for granted outside there, but that are very critical in our lives. On the 30th of October, 2022, my family wanted to bring me a birthday cake for me to have it while I was in prison. Because of the paranoid regime that we have, something that I have discovered, that we are living under one of the most useless but extremely evil regimes you can ever come across in the entire human civilization. I was written a letter, a note, by the officer in charge of Chikuru Maximum Prison, then saying that we are not going to allow yourself to be given a birthday cake by your family because the birthday cake will become a national security threat. They wrote it as a note. The Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights and other lawyers came. I gave them that note. I understand that they publicized the note that came from the prison officers. Honestly speaking, when you have got people so paranoid to think that a birthday cake is a national security threat, it must tell you that as a people, we are in trouble. We are being governed by people who are just cruel, who are heartless, who love to inflict pain in other people for no apparent reason but flexing of power and muscle, which are some of these trials and tribulations that we come through. Like what you said, it didn't make you angry. It did not make me angry, but it made me to realize that some people are foolish and stupid. And for me to react to stupid people and to stupid behavior, sometimes it will be defocusing you from the broader national agenda. I was stopped, my wife and my family members were stopped to give me my birthday cake in prison. I was treated like an outcast, and they didn't want me to get this birthday cake. And the reports that I obtained on that particular day, the 30th of October 2022, is that even the national security agencies like CIO and other arms of the national security agencies came and surrounded Shukuru Maximum Prison to bar my family to see me and to bar my family from bringing the cake. I was only given the right for me to see my wife late, around 4 p.m. after protestations from my lawyers, who had my family to call the lawyers and also to advise other media houses that they are being denied to see me on the day of my birthday. They then later allowed my wife only to come and see me on that particular day and so forth. So it shows and tells you that those people who have not gone through some of the experience that we have gone through, they haven't yet seen anything in life. This regime is cruel. That's why I call upon the people of Zimbabwe to deeply introspect and sympathize with our comrades, Comrade Timba and Comrade Jameson Timba and others who are currently being incarcerated in prison. It's not easy there for them. I have been there. I've gone through the mill. I've gone through the experience. We need to really give them complete and absolute solidarity for them to understand that also we people outside, we love them as well and they are suffering on our behalf.
I want to thank you very much, Honorable Job Sikhala, for coming through on the situation right now here on Heart and Soul TV and radio. And our motto as usual and as always is that come as you are, there's no voice too loud or too low that can't be heard on this platform. Anyone has a right to be heard. Now, Honorable Sikhala, I'll just give you an opportunity before you go, just under a minute, to say something maybe that lies deeply in your heart.
No, thank you very much, the people of Zimbabwe. I'm happy that Dara has invited me to have an interview for my 52th birthday. At 52, I matured enough for me to understand the experiences that I've gone through, and I'm happy that we are sharing my birthday celebrations for the first time after 2 years having been in prison. I thank you for the love that you have given me while I was in prison. I received and also opened up several messages on different platforms of you having been giving me birthday wishes while I was in prison. Today I'm outside. I will be celebrating with all of you, the people of Zimbabwe. I love you all. Thank you.
Amazing. I want to thank you very much for coming through. Now, When we sit down, sometimes we have to reflect in our lives. We have to try and understand where we have come from so that we know where we are going. As a nation, we can never forget our history, and we should never forget our history. We should also not forget the history of those who have sacrificed their family time and their lives to ensure that Zimbabwe is a better space. Those who have fought on our behalf while we sleep in our homes. Even if we disagree with them, the contribution that they continue to make is at the center and at the crux of developing this country. Because without diversity and without opposing ideas, we can never get the best ideas. Job Sikhala at 52 meant that politics is hard. This is and this will always be the situation right now with me, host as usual, Dara B. Until next time, please don't forget to subscribe and choose us as your station of choice. Goodbye.